with his introductions. Do you want to start?
Jeremy Lokirko, Transpac representative.
John Cunningham, Contra Costa County.
Ahmed Abu Ali, City of Antioch.
Paul Reinders, City of Pittsburgh, representing Transplant.
Yvette Ortiz, City of El Cerrito, representing WICTAC.
Tom Horaeus with Tri Delta Transit.
Jerry Fay, Contra Costa County.
Steve Kersavan, City of Brentwood.
Heather Ballinger, City of Walnut Creek, representing City County Engineers.
Michelle Rodriguez, City of San Pablo, and also, I guess, WETTAC.
Peter Engel, CCTA.
Matt Kelly, CCTA.
Eric Alm, Caltrans District 4 Planning.
Walter Parsons, taking over for Mike Higgins. I mean, CCTA, I actually wanted to introduce Walt. He's going to be following up on the projects that have federal funding or state funding. So Mike Higgins resigned from Parsons, and Walt is our replacement.
Any members of the public wishing to comment? Okay. Moving on to item C, approval of summary actions. Do I have a motion? Or
Make a motion.
Second.
all those in favor of
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Unanimously approved. Moving on to the consent calendar. Do I have any motions to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimously approved. Okay, moving on to item 4, project monitoring, upcoming obligation deadlines for federal aid projects and status of projects placed on FHWA quarterly inactive list. Any staff report?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. So I'm going to just kick off this one here. Hopefully in the future it'll be Walt dealing with this. And I'm going to leave the floor to him, but basically this is your monthly update for projects that either have federal funding or have STIP funding, which is almost federal now. It's kind of almost the same. But we track the STP CMAQ projects that we get funding for through MTC and all their deadlines. And the Resolution 3606 from MTC dictates some deadlines for us that we have to follow. And if we don't follow our projects, our funding for the projects is really become jeopardized because of not only that MTC could put us on a watch, could put the jurisdiction that does not deliver on a watch list and question whether they should be given money in the future, but also that the available funding could be in jeopardy after April 30th because the STP CMAQ part becomes common to all the state. And I'm sure you're not new to this information, but I just wanted to stress that point now that we are in May actually, and we have some projects that unfortunately did not meet the deadlines, whether excusable or not. That's really something to be decided by MTC. However, the good thing is that if you have met the first deadline, which is currently the February 1st deadline, by submitting a complete and accurate, now and I put like 3 lines under complete and accurate package to E76, that is a package that Caltrans does not come back to you and say, okay, well, you're missing this or you're missing that or this is a wrong form or like right-of-way cert is not yet approved by Caltrans and all that. That's what I mean by a complete and accurate. And that's what MTC actually means by by a complete and accurate package. If you meet that February 1st deadline, then even if Caltrans, say by defaulting on your E76 process for any reason, short staff or whatever, got put under a leg of a table in someone's desk, just kidding, then MTC will guarantee the funding for you. So that's only with that condition. Otherwise, you and all the jurisdictions in the state will compete for the funds, which probably by July the pot dries out. And then you don't have any funding for the project. And if MTC, sometimes MTC will agree to give you funding from the next year's, but most likely not. Anyway, just wanted to kick that out because, Walt is going to probably talk about this a little bit. And then the STIP 2014 projects are in the list. And again, the federal inactive projects are in the list. And we don't usually spend too much time on this item unless there is a particular the message that you want to get across, which this is your time, and I'll leave it all to you.
Great, thank you. My name's Walt Allen, and it's nice to be here. Thank you. I talked with some of you last month in trying to get information about the federal aid project status, for the federal aid project status report. So, that's going to be my job, is to contact you, and I wanted to make a initial communication with everyone at the beginning. Next month I'll just send out an email and we'll just go from there. And then you can respond to the email, and sometimes that's easier. But I just like to, Amin has been very strict in the sense that how he wants to make sure that complete applications are submitted according to the deadline. And so everybody's got their applications in, and some of them are waiting for district approval, some of them are waiting for headquarters approval, and that's just going to have to go through its process. We're fortunate to have a new Parsons employee, Lee Tobanek, District 4 Deputy Director for Local Assistance and Planning, has joined Parsons. So, I talked with Lee this morning. He was at the meeting, the lunch meeting earlier today. I saw some of you folks there. But Lee said, well, sure, he'll just call up those guys over in Local Assistance and see what's going on. So that's one of the things that we're going to be able to bring to this little picnic here, that we're able to have some direct input from Caltrans Local Assistance, some feedback. But the thing now is, of course, to focus on what's going to happen for the next cycle. We have the 2015 cycle, and that's starting up, right away. So, if you go to that page 4-7, just forget about 4-6, because we've done what we can do on that. We're going to follow through with that. But if you go to 4-7, then you can actually see, some folks have projects here that field review was supposed to have happened. For example, you estimated the field review for the city of Concord on the Concord various streets preservations were going to occur on May 1st. Well, I don't know if it occurred or not, but it needs to. You're the folks that need to be thinking about that and need to be looking at this table and looking at your projects and filling in. When I communicate with you next week or so, then you're going to need to fill in that column that says when you're going to actually be completing those field reviews and estimating the time of your NEPA approval and getting a right-of-way cert. So something to be thinking about into the future here. Inactive obligations, that's really just something that's downloaded from the Caltrans website. That's something that you need to pay attention to let you know it's inactive. In most cases, it's just a matter of sending an invoice or, keeping, to keep the project alive. And that's specific to each project. So I'll just leave it at that. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to, if not answer them now, at least find an answer for you. Before we jump into that, one other thing I wanted to mention, on the funding summary, if you go back to that item, that's the previous item. When I had collected that information initially, there was not a date for application for the PASS, the Program for Arterial Systems Synchronization. So that date is now May 20th. That's the date. Next Tuesday, 5 p.m., is the closing date for that program. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from?
I just have a quick question. Just to understand, we were on 4.7, and if you don't have a date in a field review or NEPA approval, I know some of these are just estimates, does that mean you haven't talked to the local agency and know that date, or it's already happened and so it's not in there, or does it vary?
In the cases that are blank, we just don't have that information for our sheet here.
Okay.
We would like to get that information. We
Okay.
need to have that. We want to, this is just a really tracking and monitoring exercise that we're engaged in here. So if you have a date, we'll
Get it to
definitely
you.
get it to me.
Okay.
I mean,
Just kind of a side note, not related to this particular project monitoring, but related to project delivery, really, which is next week, Caltrans is coming to give a workshop or to conduct a workshop for construction-related matters related to projects that are federally funded. And I think by now we got a representation almost from everyone. I think we're still missing Walnut Creek and the county and a couple of other, San Ramon, I believe. But everybody else here is sent us or is going to send a representation. And this is just kind of wanted to stress the point that these workshops are really gonna hopefully first, you're gonna see the people who are in District 4, meet them face to face, and whoever is related to construction. If you have any question that is pressing, you can ask them. It's a 4-hour presentation. Hopefully it's gonna be worth your time. We're gonna try and do another presentation probably by the end of the summer related to the project delivery itself, authorization, NEPA, right-of-way cert, all these kind of things, maybe another 4 hours. We were thinking of doing this even at the MTC level, like where it's going to be like probably all of local assistance and all of the counties, might be on a bigger scale. But this is something that I really urge that everybody should take a note of and try and make the meeting next week and any other meetings that will be coming related to this. Thank you.
Just one more point. Amin reminded me that there's going to be a federal aid training class in Rohnert Park June 2nd through the 6th. And there was a notice that was sent out about that. Now that's 5 days. It's every section, every part of the federal aid process. So that's really, it's kind of like the academy of project delivery in terms of federal aid and local assistance. So that's another one that's a really good one to attend if you can get away for even one day. That's very valuable.
I'm done. Thanks.
all right, thank you. The agenda says action. Are you asking for action on this item? Okay. So we're moving on to item 5, review of draft action plans and CTPL in preparation for July 2014 release of the draft 2014 CTP update.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Matt Kelly, CCTA. I'm here to present it's an information item regarding the development of the CTP, the Countywide Transportation Plan, and an update on the action plans and how all that fits together and where we're at and where we go from here. So I get to board letter. Here we go. So what we have for you today is just kind of discuss the outline of the Countywide Transportation Plan, and we'll just kind of walk through the different parts of it. Basically, we kicked off the Countywide Transportation Plan basically with the update of the action plans early last year. We've got 5 action plans going in the 5 subregions, including Tri-Valley. That also includes the Alameda County portion of Tri-Valley. And we've been working through the RTPCs, the TACs, and the board to develop those action plans. I think probably most of you in this room have been involved in one way or another in the development of those. And so the action plans, as you probably know, really feed and make up a big portion of the Countywide Transportation Plan, the CTP. When we started talking about how to put together the CTP this year, this time around, we decided to kind of condense it a little and make it into 3 very distinct volumes. One, the first volume would be the plan itself. We, in the past, have had 8 chapters. We're going down to 5. And then the second volume will be the actual action plans themselves, kind of formatted to look like separate documents, but all with the same look. So, when you read an East County action plan and a West County action plan, they're from the same county and were worked on by, same group of people. Not the same exact group, but at least under the same umbrella. And then the third volume would be the CTPL, the Comprehensive Transportation Project Listing, which contains all the projects that you and other project sponsors have added to the CTPL over the years. So the CTP, other than the 3 volumes, where was I going to go with this? Basically, we're documenting major changes that have occurred in in the planning environment in the Bay Area over the last 5 years since the 2009 plan. That includes the adoption of Plan Bay Area, the OBAG, One Bay Area grants that you're all involved in, CEQA streamlining. There will probably be some mention of the SB 743 changes, goods movement being such a major strategy in regional planning, climate change, sea level rise, cap and trade, congestion pricing, open road tolling, public-private partnerships, all those things that are kind of out there in our working environment that maybe weren't documented or weren't around in 2009. So we're getting all that in there. We're working on a draft right now. The draft should be about 70 pages. It's not going to be a humongous 200-page document. We're going to try and make it, easy to digest. We're going to have a draft ready for the CTP task force, which I believe is on the 28th of this month. And then it'll go from there to the planning committee and then to the board. So there will be something available in draft form next month. As far as the action plans, you all probably know about the ones you've been working on, but there are five of them out there. What we're highlighting in the countywide plan is that there are some changes to the action plans that different from 2009. There's the addition of new routes. You've got routes that weren't completed in the past. that have now been completed and brought into the routes of regional significance. But you've also got new routes that weren't part of the plans before that are now part of the plans, like Bailey Road was part of the East County Action Plan last time around, but wasn't part of the Central County Action Plan. So now it has been adopted by both regional committees and is now a route of regional significance for its entire length. Well, most of its length. You've got the BART line, the Pittsburgh-Big Point line, but only in La Marinda as a route of regional significance. So basically, service through the Orinda and Lafayette stations are a route of regional significance and have their own MTSOs. You've got the Iron Horse Trail in Tri-Valley only, which is now a route of regional significance, and they're developing MTSOs as well. So, and what the countywide plan will also look at is the need for regional cooperation, where you've got something in one sub area that's maybe inconsistent or just different than what's in the next sub area, and it'll highlight those areas that need some sort of regional cooperation. So maybe discussions between Central, West, and La Marinda and East on getting BART as a regional route of significance for its entire length. That's still up to the regional committees, but there need to be discussions on whether that's a good idea or not. Same with the Iron Horse Trail; it goes through 3 subregions. And there's a lot more emphasis on biking, transit, walking, the impact of diversions on regional routes from freeways. So that's all being discussed in these action plans and will be highlighted in the CTP. Management of dealing with 239, State Route 239, the TriLink project between East County and Tri-Valley. There's some, one subregion is a little more supportive of it than the other, mostly because there's another county involved in one of those subregions that isn't 100% behind it. So that's another issue that will need to be worked out. And if you remember, the State Route 4 integrated corridor ICA, integrated corridor analysis study came out of the last action plans, where we had 3 subregions that didn't all completely agree on what the MTSO for State Route 4 should be. So that study kind of looked at that across sub-regional boundaries. That's I guess it for highlights of the action plan. And as you know, they are out for circulation right now and for comment. And so all 5 of them are on our website if you'd like to take a look. But they're also part of this, they're attachment B of this item on the website. So you can download them all as one group. Third part of the CTP will be the CTPL. In the board letter, page 5.3 and 5.4, you can see there's a summary of the CTPL. You're probably used to this $11.1 billion if you were around at all last year when we did open calls for the CTP or the CTPL for the CMP, the Safe Routes to Schools, it's TLC, all those various open calls for projects last year. We were at about $11.1 billion, what you see in the top table. And what we did for this is we separated, we didn't normally include the program categories in the listing before, so this time around we've included the programs as a separate listing. So the second table has all the programs. That's another $14 billion. So right here we've got about $25 billion in projects. So it's projects and programs. So we wanted to make sure we captured everything this time around. because moving forward, we'll be focusing a lot more on programs than projects, especially without a reauthorization of Measure J, which we hope to have in a couple of years. And that's what this CTP will hopefully set us up for. So that's about it. There's not a lot to show you in terms of the actual plan itself, because like I said, we won't have a draft till next month. The outline has already been approved by the authority board, along with the goals and strategies, vision goals and strategies, which you can look at in the last month's planning committee agenda. But basically, the action plans and CTPL listing are there for you to look at on the website. If you have any comments, feel free to give them to me now, or you can submit them to Brad or myself if you have any issues or just concerns about what we've presented today.
Questions from the committee? Jeremy?
Hey, Matt, thank you for the great presentation. I had just a general question in your explanation of the changes about the new CTPL, the updates that are occurring, and the designation of these potentially new routes of regional significance. Has there been any thought given by CCTA on how new routes in the future could be designated? Because it seems to me if only one RTP is designating, that would be a sub-regional route of significance, not a regional route of significance. And so I guess what concerns me is we have a plan that has some fragmented, depending on which region you're in, may designate a route on their own or may not. And so I'm wondering if there's been any thought to maybe in the future that if new routes of regional significance are in fact included in the plan, that they have to be adopted at least more than one regional area. It seems to me that would be the inclusive way to really truly make it a regional facility, or regional, that would be up to get that regional designation. So I just wanted your feedback. Has there been any thought about that? Because I can see some concerns about each individual RTPC coming forward and having different routes designated differently than than others.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern of the authority. When we kicked off the action plan process last year, we definitely were encouraging the RTPCs to be more multimodal in their MTSOs and things like that. But we weren't necessarily expecting the trails and BART to be named routes of regional significance, though we do leave that up to the regional committees. So when that happened, it did come out of left field, I guess. We just weren't expecting it, but we didn't say, no, you can't do that. So I would imagine one of the things that will come out of the CTP, one of the kind of white papers or studies or some level of analysis will be put into how we treat those routes when they are only, it's a subset of the route that's being named a regional route, and that's a good point. When you only got a subset of the route, and it's only within a subregion, it's not by definition regional. And La Morinda has kind of gone a step further and created their own inter-regional routes. So they've thought about that. They've got, I think, Moraga Way and Moraga Road and a couple others, maybe St. Mary's, as not full regional routes of regional significance, but intra-regional. It's only within their subregion, and they don't have the same impacts to developments and so forth as a full route of regional significance. So yeah, I think that needs to be considered, whether they would just be named your own intra-regional route of significance, or if they if they want to be a route of regional significance, it needs to include the entire route. So the authorities definitely has it on their radar. I think we'll get past this action plan or update in the CTP and use the time in between to figure out how to deal with it next time around. Does that sound fair, Brad?
Let me add one thing. I hate our new setup here. We have Granicus now as a way to record our meetings and stream them over the internet. But to do it, we have to have 2 laptops if we're going to do any kind of presentations, which doesn't leave us much room here. The issue you raise is an issue that has been raised before, and I'll mention Bailey Road as an example where East County's designated its section of Bailey Road as a regional route, and Central County did not designate its section of Bailey Road as a regional route. My understanding is that they have agreed to both include it as a regional route now. That is something that could happen with Central County and SWAT and Tri-Valley with Iron Horse Trail as well, or with BART for all the regions in the county. I mean, it would be a first step. One of the purposes, there are 2 basic purposes for having regional routes. One of them is to judge or to set standards for how that regional route, which is important to that subregion, operates. So for Tri-Valley, they've decided that the Iron Horse Trail, which ends up going all the way almost to the Altamont Pass, or at least will ultimately, is an important route for that region, and they want to have measures to judge how well that facility operates. They don't have any MTSOs yet because they haven't established a baseline, but they will do with the next action plan. The other thing that regional routes are for is to judge the impacts of development. So if a development of a certain size generates a certain amount of traffic, how will that affect those regional facilities that have been designated within that region? So for Tri-Valley, they are decided that they're going to start looking at the impacts of new developments on the Iron Horse Trail as well as on the other regional routes in Tri-Valley. So that is a purpose that doesn't necessarily have to apply for every part of that route in every region. It probably would be better if it did. And I expect that that's a conversation that we'll have, and Central County and Tri-Valley will be having later.
I guess my only follow-up to that would be that, and I'm not disagreeing with or questioning the ability to designate the route, except that if there's RTPCs that don't feel that it's necessary to make that designation, or if there's some concerns about the MTSOs that have been established that then get applied region-wide, then I think that requires additional dialogue. I mean, I would think that would be something that could be considered, because I remember, at least in Central County, one of the concerns that we had are that both BART and the Iron Horse Trail are with outside jurisdictions control. They are maintained by other agencies that have separate authority. And so, while individual projects may influence that, or, ideally we'd love to achieve a certain MTSO, we haven't had that dialogue yet to determine what that would look like. And so there was kind of a hesitation about coming up with these designations without giving it some more thought on really what that means region-wide and how what kind of impacts that would have. So that's all. I didn't mean to induce additional dialogue on this here today, other than to say that I certainly would encourage that in the future if that is an opportunity.
Well, and we certainly have had had the action plans be the impetus for that further dialogue. And as Matt mentioned, the Highway 4 ICA was an example of the decisions that the different RTPCs made on a common facility. Ended up with a study where they worked jointly to come up with some ideas on how to address Highway 4 in that case. And before Central County designated Pleasant Hill Road and La Miranda didn't, and the authority did end up deciding that all of Pleasant Hill north of Highway 24 needed to be a regional route, and that was what John was just going to mention. That's an example where the authority pushed the RTPCs to start to address, and there will be additional dialogue on Pleasant Hill Road. And it's one of the actions in the Central County Action Plan. And certainly one of the things that La Miranda is interested in.
Any other questions? Thanks. Oh,
I just
Matt.
wanted to mention, I did hand out this schedule that does show the CTP schedule, the action plans, and the CTP EIR, among other things.
And it also, as you note, goes now into 2016. 2015 and 2016 will be all about developing a transportation expenditure plan for a potential new sales tax measure or an expansion of the existing sales tax measure.
Thank you, Matt and Brad. So that was just an information item. So moving on to item 6, update on the development and release of the draft final financial feasibility of Contra Costa County ferry service.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Engel. I'm with CCTA. I rarely get the pleasure of coming in front of this committee. Usually I'm in front of the Paratransit Committee or the Bus Committee, or most recently the Ferry Working Group that I'll talk a little bit about today. So a little over a year ago, I think, how this all started, there were some articles in the paper about WETA ferry service and a lack of communication and lack of working with local cities that were identified in the ferry services implementation and operations plan, which was done back in 2003 for expanded ferry service in the Contra Costa County. And county staff at that time asked us to step in and see if there's a way we could kind of get everybody on the same page and talking. So we started this working group that involved representatives of the 4 affected cities, and that's Richmond, Hercules, Martinez, and Antioch. Staff from the 3 RTPCs that are affected in that area, county staff, and then we had somebody from Senator DeSaulnay's office as well, and CCTA, and WETA staff as well, sorry. And the outcome of the first couple meetings was we should put together a white paper, because there's been a lot of information that was written up and a lot of studies done, but it wasn't in one place, and there was some discrepancy as to, you said this before, now you're saying this, and things like that. So we hired EPS to put together this white study, and the white study quickly became, or the white paper quickly became a study. It's about 104 pages long, It took about a year to do, because what we found as we got into it was the existing documentation didn't really tell the whole story from a cost perspective. Additional model runs needed to take place over the same planning period so that we could compare apples to apples when we looked at the different services. Models needed to be run on an interline type service, so there's originally there was direct services from the cities into San Francisco from the 4 cities, but the concept of interlining a service from Antioch to Martinez, then in the city, or Antioch to Martinez to Hercules in the city, those would potentially affect certainly certainly capital costs because less vessels would need to be used, and it could have an effect on overall operating costs because, depending on how the shifts work for the crew members and things like that. So those models needed to be run because, of course, if you're interlining services, the service is going to take longer. It's going to have an effect on ridership. So the study now, for the most part, is complete. We plan to release it publicly as part of the Planning Committee agenda in June. We're trying to have the study not get too far out in front of the board's approval in June to basically release the draft publicly so that it can be reviewed by the RTPCs and more so by the 4 cities that are involved that are real stakeholders in this. I suspect the members that have been sitting on the working group have kept their cities involved, but it hasn't become a public document, so to speak, until everybody's on the same page with this. There's some information in your staff board letter about the cities that were used and the process that EPS went through in developing the plan. I certainly, Chadrick and Tim Tucker were both involved in the working group, and I certainly invite their comments in this report. But I just wanted to bring to your attention that this report will be released in June, and for the 4 cities involved, there could be some follow-on studies that occur. This basically will give the cities an opportunity to look at the costs in general and decide if they think it's worthy moving forward with ferry service to their communities. I will say that of the 4, there's only 2 that fit into MTC's concept of transit expansion in the Bay Area, and that's Richmond and Hercules. And Richmond has been working with WETA over a significant period of time and is pretty much has the green light to go ahead and move forward. So I think from the study perspective, it goes back to more Hercules, Martinez, and Antioch. The study itself had a limited budget and brought up some issues that probably will need further study. It didn't look at alternative technologies such as hovercraft. There is a hovercraft study out, but it wasn't specific enough, in our opinion, to the 4 existing routes to apply that information here. So that's a further thing that needs to be studied. Emergency service and how the costs associated with providing ferry landing facilities and vessels for emergency only, how that cost would affect ongoing, having to keep those capital costs up all the time. And I think what was determined, it would be more appropriate if we're looking at emergency services, that county emergency, Office of Emergency be involved in that so they can help identify the most appropriate routes in case of an emergency situation. So there is identified in the plan some further policy issues that need to be looked at and some further studies that if the cities are truly interested in moving forward, they might want to consider taking on some of those additional studies. So I'll see if Chad or Tim have anything to say, and I'll leave it at that. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have much to say. Thank you. That was a great summary and accurately, in my view, portrayed the discussions and the eventual content of the white paper, which is much more than a white paper now. We'll note just for general information, the environmental document for the Richmond terminal is out for comment now. And so we'd certainly invite comments on that document. And we're looking forward to moving that project forward.
Yeah, and I just want to really thank CCTA and Peter especially. I mean, it seems to me that WETA has really focused on Alameda, San Francisco counties, and South City. And, I think that they at least have our attention now, and hopefully we can move forward to explore ferry service to other cities in Contra Costa County.
I will add one more thing for WETA in general. Currently, they have a 4 or 5 member board, which doesn't include, I shouldn't say it doesn't include, the member who basically represents Alameda, who works in Alameda, is actually a resident of Contra Costa County. But there's 2 seats currently open on the board, and there's at least 2 that I know, 1 for sure, I think 2, and maybe even 3 members from Contra Costa that have applied for seats to be on that board. The governor has not yet appointed those. They're both governor appointed seats. So hopefully here in the next month or 2, we'll see if we get somebody who lives and works and is elected from Contra Costa to participate on that board.
When the ferry issue first came to Transplan, and looking at WEDA's plans and their implementation intent, it made sense. It kind of rang true to most staff out there. However, I think as you alluded to, there wasn't some of the data that would support those decisions. Sometimes there were conflicts. Sometimes the data just wasn't there or wasn't otherwise available. When you did the study, the EPS study, did you guys find any surprises or something that took you in a different direction than what WEDA had been assuming?
I would say not really. I think everything kind of came out as we suspected. There was one surprise, I guess, and WEDA staff was very surprised because they had never done the analysis before on the interline services. And there was, I wouldn't say a significant, but a higher than anticipated ridership number from Antioch to Martinez, actually riders that would just go from Antioch to Martinez and not on to San Francisco. So that was something that kind of jumped out in WEDA's mind.
Michelle?
Thank you, Peter. I'm just wondering maybe 2 things. Can we talk a little bit more about just implementation and the local responsibility? I think this is really an interesting idea from an economic development standpoint. And then I guess the other question would be, I guess, more for Matt, and on the CTP, whether the CTP in the ferry sections is going to address this at all or not.
As far as implementation, right now we're leaving that up to the cities and WEDA and see how they want to move forward. Right now, all we're looking at is releasing this document so that they have all this information and can talk about it publicly. CCTA will obviously continue to work with the cities on their interest. There's several policy decisions, I think, that need to be made from the city perspective. Obviously, if they want to move forward with this, if they want to move forward in partnership with one of the other cities, for instance, our Antioch and Martinez, if they did that, they would have to commit because that cost of that service would be based on both of those cities because of the crews and the boat turnaround that's involved in that. They would both have to commit to the capital costs associated with the terminals at both of those cities. So there would have to be some type of partnership between those cities to make that commitment. Economically, there wasn't enough information to really do an economic analysis as how ferry service would improve economic conditions, in the terminal area. But it does recommend that that study could occur within the city and that they actually encourage that to occur. I think it's anticipated that looking at the ridership numbers, there probably wouldn't be as large of an economic improvement as what one might anticipate, but you never know. But a further study would be necessary in that area. And then as far as the CN, maybe I can answer that question. The study was actually done using EPS through their contract to work with us on the CTP. So the idea was that this information would be provided and included in the CTP.
Just as far as what's in the CTPL, there are items in there for each of the 4 Contra Costa potential ferry terminals. Most of them are just, study future service in Antioch, whereas in West County for the Richmond and Hercules stations, there are there are more developed projects in there just because they've been a little further along and have more Measure J funding. But all four locations are in the CTPL.
I think we're done, and that was an informational item? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Peter. So we're moving on to item 7, Contra Costa County Stone Valley Road Bike Lane Gap Project Final Design Peer Review.
Yes, this is a requirement of the Measure J funding programs that projects that cost more than $500,000 have to go through the peer review process. And we went through the peer review process for one of those projects, which is Stone Valley Road Bike Lane Gap Closure. It's project 120027. Originally, the project was going to be just a bike lane, well, I shouldn't say just, but because even just putting in bike lanes, it's rarely just putting in bike lanes. And that was the case here. But when they got when we went through the peer review and discussed some of the issues with it, they did mention that the engineer's estimate was quite a bit lower than they had expected it to be. And one of the suggestions of the peer review committee was that the county add some pedestrian facilities, and they did, as part of the final design, add some pedestrian facilities to the project. The committee who sat through the review, did recommend that they didn't need to go through the 95% review as well. This was the 65% that they looked at. And with the changes that they recommended, and those are documented in the board letter or the attachments to the board letter, they recommended the TCC and the authority approve the peer review for this project. So that's my presentation.
Do we have any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Paul?
You say the project actually came under budget and they decided to add more sidewalk. How much cost was involved? I mean, what was the value of that savings?
I'm trying to remember how much it was. I can't remember. It was
a range.
I think it was something like 15% below what the original estimate
And what
was.
was the original estimate?
I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's been a while.
Does anybody?
I should have looked it up. The original cost for the project was $1.1 million.
Okay, so we're talking 100 to 200,000?
Yeah, it was something like that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was more like 200,000.
Okay.
There weren't a lot of additional pedestrian improvements added, but there were some facilities that were missing. And there was something that the peer review committee noted and suggested that the county consider adding those missing facilities since they had this savings.
Roughly 200,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was based on the engineer's estimate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know if they're going to approach that as an alternate on their bidding documents?
No, it's not.
It has to be integral to the project now.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee? I think you're requesting an action.
Yes, I'm asking for approval of the peer review committee's recommendation.
I'll move to approve the peer review.
Okay. Any second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, approved unanimously.
Thank you.
I guess the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.